Hey there, parents! This is Unlock Your Child's Full Potential podcast, and I'm your host, Billy, here to help you teach your kiddos the life lessons that will bring them closer to success and fulfillment later in life. Today, we're diving straight into the role of exercise in our children's lives and how to make it a lifelong habit. We're joined by Cathlene Miner, a powerhouse mama and grandmother of three, who's weathered the storms of single parenthood while juggling multiple jobs, and later embraced the chaos of being a stay-at-home mom to four amazing kiddos. Cathlene shares her incredible journey, showing us the magic of routines and habits in shaping our kids' best selves. This interview isn't just about jumping jacks and squats, though. Stick around because later we're peeling back the layers on cultivating a strong self-perception in our kids. It's all about nurturing their inner strength. So grab your headphones, turn up the volume, and let's get real about raising active, confident children. Hey, Cathlene, it's fantastic to have you on the show. Can you share a bit about your journey as a mom of four, grandmother of three, and a longtime personal trainer?
Absolutely. Well, my journey as a mother started early. So I got pregnant at 19 and it turned out to be one of the most amazing things in my life. I always say my son, the one that you're my first, really tuned me into the fact that I really like being a mom. This is one thing that comes really like natural to me. Not that it was all roses. You'll hear some more about that. So, yeah, I'm a mom of four, grandmother to three. There was a time in my life where I was a single mom of two, working a full-time job with two extra jobs on the side just to make ends meet. And, that kind of got me to where I am today as far as knowing how important a routine is, knowing how important a routine is for my kids, and how I realized that that's really how they were going to be able to progress to be the best versions of themselves. After that, I met my now husband. We've been married now for about 25 years, and we had two more children. So we've all just been raised as one big family, and I became a stay-at-home mom. So I became a stay-at-home mom of four children, and let me tell you, I thought that working a full-time job and two part-time jobs was tough. And then I did that, and I absolutely loved it, loved it. But you don't get a break. You don't get a break. There's no, you know what? I think I'm going to go out for a walk right now and just clear my head on my lunch hour. Like that doesn't happen. As far as the personal training goes, that's something that was actually one of my quote extra jobs that I took to make extra money when I was a single mom, because I wanted to be able to work out at a gym because I've always loved health and wellness, and I didn't have the money to work out at a gym. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to get certified. And I got certified to teach basically any kind of aerobics, every kind of aerobics that you could possibly imagine. And then started personal training women. That was my journey as far as like gyms went and things like that.
What a nice workaround. Oh,
Yeah.
you're so resourceful.
How am I going to make this work? Yes.
Yeah, love it. So, given your experience, how do you believe sports and exercise contribute to child's overall development?
Oh my goodness. I think I keep saying routine and habits. And I think that is the key number one, routine and habits. Because let's face it, we all have habits. We realize them more as we're adults. We all have habits. There's good habits that move us forward, and there's those not so good habits that we should probably replace with something else. So if we can start our kids out with some kind of a habit and a routine that's just natural to them. Like, okay, yep, got to get my body moving today. And then plan ahead. So it also taught them to plan ahead, because as I do with myself, I've always taught them, okay, what kind of things are we going to do today to get physical? What are you going to do? Are you a gym workout person? Of course, when they're little, it's a little bit different. But in my basement, when I became a stay-at-home mom, I lived in North Carolina at the time, so we have basements. I say that because I'm in Florida now. Very unusual to have a basement in Florida. But I would go down there when Skype, remember Skype? It was like the first like video. And I would be teaching women literally all over the world at 5 a.m. in the morning. And my kids would come down there, like they always knew where to find mom, if they couldn't find me. But then they would start being on the side and they would start exercising as well. And they would start moving. So it became part of their routine. So it's routine, it's habits, teaching very good habits, teaching about planning ahead. Because how many of us as adults will, whether you're working out at home or whether you're working out in a gym, will get there and be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing today? What am I supposed to be doing today? And that's actually why sometimes for adults classes work so well, right? Because I'm going to that class, and that's why gyms do that, right? They want to give you kind of a plan ahead of I can get in there and do that. But I've really noticed now that so my children are older now, 18, 19, 29, and 31. All my kids actually still have a routine. They still exercise. They still plan ahead. And I'm not saying that you need to be obsessed with it. And that's not, I think some people, they'll think, oh gosh, well, if I teach my kids that, then it could become a body issue or something like that. And maybe they need to be a certain way. But honestly, so I had an eating disorder in high school. And that's really the reason why I started getting into fitness.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew that once I, went to counseling, went to therapy, all of this, and I realized, you know what? Only way to make this work is to be healthy and to have that quote balance. Do we ever really have balance in our lives? No, let's be.
I don't believe so.
We don't. I mean, we just really don't. I always feel as far as balance goes, which we can talk about at some point, but like there's always one that's a little heavier than the other. I mean, let's be real.
So exercise is ingrained in your children. When did you start with them? I mean, did they have some sport practices or just exercise at home or in the gym?
Really, it was either in the gym or at home. And the thing is they all played sports of some sort, right? My younger two played like, the basketball, soccer, my younger two, they did martial arts from the time they were 4 years old. But when they started getting on and exercising, it was more because I was doing it. And that's what I was telling you, like in the basement, or, when I was a single mom, I had a punching bag in the living room. And I had this little, like, it wasn't even, I don't even think they had ellipticals then, because I'm 52, so this was like when I was in my early 20s. Like, it's like a little stair stepper thing. So they would know that was my routine, and then they would get up and just do it. So it wasn't like I said to them, and that's like with my first two, I say two kids because they're like, I've got like a big gap between the ages. I started realizing, this is part of their routine too. And so I would expect them to be there, and they would be there. I didn't tell them they had to be there. They would just be there. And so it started naturally as a progression. And then it became just part of our lives, and it just kind of followed on. And I think that's one thing for us to remember as moms too, is our kids are watching everything we do. We can't do that, say one thing, tell them one thing and then do another. It doesn't work in the long run. I know there's some things that adults might do that kids can't do. Yeah, no, you can't climb that high, things like that. But when it comes to our lives and routines and the choices we make and how we relate to people and our habits, even our financial situations, right? They're watching what you say. They're watching what you do. They're watching you at the store. They watch us. So it wasn't like a planned thing. It just happened. And then I started to realize as I became, more experienced as a mom that, hey, this routine is good for them. These habits they look forward to. I have 3 granddaughters. They are 8, 5, and 2. My daughter, like I said, she has a gym in her garage, and she actually personal trains women as well on video. Her kids have the same routine. It's like it's just followed. And so actually, like they were over here yesterday. I kept the 2-year-old, but the other 2 and my daughter went for a mile run. They gave themselves a goal. They're going to do a mile run 4 days a week. And they're all excited about it and they're doing it, so I think they just watch us.
Yeah, and it's so much more fun if you have a family activity like playing sport together, or if it's not the gym, if it's a swimming practice or outdoor hiking or whatever it is, just doing it as a family brings so much connection and bonding.
Oh, it definitely does. And it's just such a different bonding experience than you can really have with anything else. It's like playing a board game, meaning, you're going to get a different bonding experience sitting down and playing a board game than you are sitting and playing a video game with your kid. You just don't.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the parents that are not that physically active, but are aware that it's better to give that to their kids? What is their best approach, in your opinion?
Yeah, I come back to habits and routine. So, no matter what kind of a habit or routine that you have, which a lot of moms and parents, let's be real, they're so busy they don't. I mean, they've got the routine of I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to brush my teeth, I'm going to get the kids up, whether you go to work or you're stay at home, like, that's your routine. But what is like your routine? Is there something that's, I always suggest finding something that's motivational that will lift you up in the morning. And I know I'm talking about the parents here, but again, the kids are watching, right? So if you're not exercising yet, then start a routine with, okay, what kind of a positive quote am I going to read with my kids today? Right. So that it kind of gets everybody in that, oh, we're going to be together. This is what we do first thing in the morning. I always say first thing in the morning because you can get up 10 minutes earlier or 15 minutes earlier. We can all do it. Our kids can do it. I'm not saying that your 2-year-old's going to sit there quietly. I know this. I know this. However, they're going to see you and the other kids if you haven't, sitting down and doing something. But then that routine and those habits can turn into something else. You know what? Let's do 5 minutes of calisthenics today. It can be jumping jacks, it can be marching in place, it can be dancing to a song. It could be, if whatever, around the holidays, whatever holiday you celebrate, put on some fun, uplifting music and say, you know what, we have 5 minutes of dancing in the morning. And I've seen that work for a lot of people that just aren't mentally, they're not working out themselves, right? They're not, doing that yet. But I will say, as I've gotten older, and I like to say wiser, only because I know more than I did yesterday. I mean, I'm learning every single day because people like you, right? Being able to talk to people and hear some of the things that your ideas, I'm going to learn and then put that into practice. Again, it comes into habits and routines and just doing anything that feels good. Because as a mom, I know there's things like I love to dance, I love to sing. So those kind of things is the things that I would do with my kids as a habit and a routine that we would just do. So start out with things like that and add some movement into it. And then you can call it whatever you want. I do like to call it exercise, even if you're dancing, because it kind of gets in the kid's brain, right? Because we have to keep our body moving. And as we get older and wiser, like I said, we have to keep the blood flowing. We got to keep our lungs, with the air coming in and out. Our bodies are only made to hold so much weight. I mean, it just is what it is, depending on your body frame. We want to live long, healthy lives to be with our kids and our grandkids. And like my mom, who now has great grandkids. I mean, and the only way that we have a chance to do that is to be as healthy as we can be. Because unfortunately, things do happen, health wise. And the healthier we are, the better equipped we are already to be able to get through that.
Yeah, let's do our part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I'm interested in the sport practices. I know you had a big family. How do parents cope with the scheduling? Because if everyone has different interests, different sports activities, how do you manage it all, even though that's a priority?
Yeah, yeah, no, I went through that. Believe me, with 4 kids, especially when they were all in different sports and all had to be somewhere at a different time. And I think really the best way through it is through it. I don't know that there's really a secret, to be honest, to be able to handle it where you don't feel like you're overwhelmed at times, because sometimes you will be. I had this big black chalkboard in the kitchen, which now I still have downstairs. It's not written on like it used to be, but that was the list of everybody's things for the day. It was updated every single morning of who had what and what time, because if not, you might forget somebody somewhere. I mean, let's be real. Once they get, you're like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to pick them up at 6:30. So I always had everything written down so that did not happen. And between my husband and I, we would make sure that everybody was picked up on time and dropped off. But I really think it's about organization. And I think also teaching our kids that, especially if you have more than one child, right? Because that's when it gets more challenging. Your so and so does this. Let's go cheer them on because they do it for you. And it's really does. Your life does become those sports. I mean, let's be real. They do. You have to revolve your entire schedule around it. But in saying that, your kids are exercising and they're doing sports. But then as a parent, what are you doing for yourself? And I think we have to remember that. as far as keeping active. Again, the kids are watching you. So many kids that I see, they might have played basketball all the way through school or been on the swim team all the way through. They leave and they go to college, and then they just don't do it anymore because that exercise portion is not ingrained in their head, but the sport is. So
Okay, I see the difference.
yeah, sports done. Not playing basketball anymore. Not playing swimming anymore. I'm not on a team. Oh, I don't have no idea what to do. And they just don't do anything. So I think that's another reason why if a parent is as active as they can be, within reason, not saying you have to go overboard, but have a routine with it, your kids will see. And as far as the schedule and handling the overwhelm of kids being in a whole bunch of different, having to be in all different places, again, that's what we said at the beginning. Like, there's really no such thing as balance. I really don't think that there is. I always feel like balance is going to be given as to what needs to be, right? Kind of like the scale. I might have to put more on this side today and less on this side because so and so she's got it together today. Like, talk about your kids. All right, that one's good. They could be on autopilot. So we're gonna give like 30% to that one, and then the other one over here needs more help today. So 70% is going to have to go in this direction. And that's the way that I have found for me to think of it in that way, because that kind of goes with the sports and the running around as well. What is the day like? Who's heavier on needing the assistance that day and who can be on autopilot? Because let's be real, when you've got more than one child, they're not always going to get all the attention, and you're not going to be able to.
And they will complain. What if one of them needs your assistance most of the time? Like it's regularly heavier on her side. How do you deal with that?
I think that comes and goes throughout their lives as well. Just from having kids that are older is, there'll be it seems like certain times in some of their lives where they needed more attention and the other ones were kind of on autopilot, and then it would change. Right. Of course, if you have a child with special needs or something like that, it's always going to be heavier on that one side. But what I've done in times like that is to get the other children kind of explain a little bit about what's going on. So-and-so is feeling this way, let's help in any way that we can. And typically the kids will get on board and they'll be like, oh, because they want to help. Who doesn't want to help somebody? Right. They all want to help. And I'm not saying it's always like, oh, sure, let me go help my sibling, depending on the age, right? Because sometimes they're like, no, I've got my own things to do. But I guess, again, that's part of what we have to teach our kids. We have to teach them that empathy and teach them that, they really need us right now. Yeah. And we're gonna be there. And so it takes a lot of talking and communication.
And just be as a team, like a family team.
Absolutely.
We support each other. Yeah. Do you think that sport and the routines you mentioned can keep kids out of trouble when they enter the teen years? Because I imagine if they have to go to a practice after school most of the days, they have less time to engage in unhealthy activities and habits. Do you think that's a measure we can take early on? I
absolutely do. 100%. And I can say that too, because I can look back and one of my children decided that they were going to stop one of the sports for a little while. And I kind of had mixed feelings about it. And I was like, but then, you're like, okay, well, if they really don't want to do it anymore, you don't want to make them do something. But I'll tell you, within that year, there was a lot of ups and downs. And it was within the teenage year. Years. But one particular year stands out. And when I can look back now, I know things happen for a reason, but I feel like had she not stopped, we wouldn't have had to go through the other things that we had to go through, as far as, feeling down, depressed, being a little, just a lot of things that go along with that. It was tough.
Yeah, I think that physical exercise is an amazing outlet for all those emotions that run high during this period.
Yeah, and that's another way that we've always described it to our kids, especially my husband. He's really good at talking to them about that stuff. And he'll ask, even today, I hear him on the phone with my two college, because we have two in college. And his question is, one of his questions, excuse me, always is, what kind of exercise did you do today? because we've always explained it to them as well. Because some kids more than others, right? I have one in particular that just it helps her with getting mad, right? It helps her with that anger portion because she needs to get it out somewhere. She has a lot of energy, right? And we notice when there's exercise involved, that's the outlet. That's the outlet. That's the outlet you want them to have, especially if they're not in the sport anymore that they were playing when they were in school. They've got to have something, or else they'll find something. And sometimes that something is not good, right? Because they've got,
Right.
especially when they're going away to college, they've got influences, people that you don't know. It's not like you're right there anymore. They're on their own for the first time. So I do think that keeping them in those sports throughout high school specifically is important. But if you can't, and if it's a kid that doesn't like sports, I mean, let's be real, some of them don't. Some of
Yeah.
them, especially with computers and things these days, I mean, that wasn't available when I was little. Like you couldn't sit and do that. I mean, you could watch TV, but gosh, even when I was little, I'm kind of dating myself, but I mean, we had the black and white TV that I was the remote control, like my dad would say, could you turn the channel? And that was me
Right.
turning the channel. But so we did get outside. We did do more things. But if your children don't like to do sports, again, that comes back to the parent and what is your habit and what is your routine? What can you guys do together? And they're not going to like it, depending on their age, they may not like it at first. But that's why it's good to start early, right? Your kids want to be with you when they're little. I'm not saying they
Yeah.
don't want to be with you when they're a little older, but I will tell you it's harder, okay?
They prefer their friends, right?
They much prefer their friends. And you think, huh, all right, I'm not going to beg somebody to hang out with me today. But by then, they have their routine set. So, but when they're so young that they're not really in a sport yet, you can still get them on a routine. And that way, if they're the kind of child that does get more, I mean, some of these kids are whizzes on computers. I mean, seriously, like that's their talent. They don't want to get out there and hit the ball with anybody, or they just don't. But everybody can do something within their home, but it has to be a routine and it has to be a habit. So if I can just, that's what I would say from my experience is stressing is routine, habits, of course, communication between your kids and yourself. That's really huge.
Yeah, and do it together. That's
Yeah.
the main
Yeah.
theme.
Right. That is the main theme. And they may not like it at first, but then again, they're going to watch you start early. Like I mean, if you've got a little child and you're exercising every day and they start seeing you, your 2-year-old's going to be up there doing the same thing.
We exercise outside the home so they don't see us going to the gym. But we have a little routine in our home. Every month, we have these charts where we write the exercise for the month. For example, my oldest one is doing pull-ups. My middle one is doing squats. And everyone has a target, a daily target, and they have to write it in the chart. So they have this type of just measuring every day what they're doing for exercise outside the sports practice.
Well, again, that's great because that gets their habit and their routine. You've started a habit and a routine for them. So it'll be fun when they get older and they're not at home anymore to see what they'll have that on their mind. And if they don't and they're not doing anything, you could say, okay, why don't you give yourself a challenge? Remember when you used to like to give yourself a challenge? Oh, yeah, I did. Or maybe you'll start doing that with them, right? You'll start doing that with them when they're older. You say, okay, let's do a challenge. Even if you're
Yeah.
not in the same house anymore, like let's do a challenge.
Yeah, that's a nice tradition. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're doing that. That's awesome.
They're not always motivated to do that, but it's
Right.
already so ingrained that it's part of the brush your teeth, do your bed, and do your pull-ups.
Right. And that's again, I just feel like in our lives, even as adults, we know that becoming, having habits, having routines, targeting our habits that may not be so good that we know that aren't good for us, and how are we going to replace those with something else? It teaches our kids the same thing. And then when they become teenagers or in their 20s and maybe they have a habit that's not so good, and you can say, okay, listen, how do we replace this habit? And it's not new to them anymore. They've heard this before. They know. And that's why I always feel like I wrote a book called The 30-Day Self-Perception Makeover, and it's for women. And then I wrote one for the teen version. And, I always say they may not gather everything. They might not listen to everything in that book, but I know it's sinking in. So my goal is, like I did with my kids, that it's back here. It's here. They know it's here. And something's gonna be like, oh, I've heard that before. And slowly, it won't be foreign to them when they've got to make some changes in their lives.
Yeah, and I do believe that the best way is to replace a bad habit with a new one, with a
Yeah,
healthy habit. You cannot
absolutely.
just stop doing something. You have to do something in its place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's how you have success. And then who doesn't keep going when they have success? We all do.
Yeah.
Right?
Tell me about that self-image. How do you build confidence in our little girls? I have 3 girls, so I'm very interested in the subject.
Yeah, yeah. So, we talk a lot or I talk a lot about self-perception, which is what we think and feel about ourselves. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. What do you really think and feel about yourself? Because as we get older, we start to really listen to what other people say. And that's what we start to think and feel about ourselves, right? We think and feel about ourselves what other people think, which are really just opinions. They're not even, there's no truths to it. So it's really about reminding our kids and asking them those questions about what do you think about yourself? What do you think about this? And you can see at a very young age what they come back with and think, ooh, and sometimes you might be shocked and like, oh my gosh, like where did they hear that from? Like I never said that. But you have TV, you have friends, they're hearing things, they're listening all the time. What the approach that I took with it was always making sure that they're looking at themselves in the mirror and complimenting themselves. Sounds simple, but we don't typically do it. Think about us
We
as
don't.
adults. The first thing we do is look in the mirror and say, ooh, oh, we're looking at what we feel like we need to fix, right? So that shifted for me in my 20s. Well, like I said, I had an eating disorder in high school. There was a lot that went on. And I thought, you know what? I've got to make this a healthier life for myself because I wanted to be a good role model for my kids. And it is about teaching our girls that you really can do anything, but first you have to love yourself first. And self-love is different than self-perception. Self-perception is what you think about yourself. And so we need to make sure we keep thinking about ourselves in the best way possible. So reminding our girls and asking them, oh, what did you do today that you thought you were good at? Because those are questions that we know what they're good at. We assume they know what they're good at. But I promise you, as society kind of fills our heads, even at a young age, we're first starting to think about the things, they start to think about the things that they could improve or that they're not good at.
And it's our fault as well, because we so often criticize them and don't pay so much attention to the things they do well.
Amen to that. And I will tell you that is very important. And that's something that I really tried to pay attention to as my kids got older. Like I said, I've got 4 kids. And so I've been through the teenage years a few times now. And there were times when I had to remind myself to make sure that I was complimenting them on the good things, because the only thing I could think about was what I was really annoyed about right now and about what they were not doing. Because listen, there were plenty of them. And I thought I was a good parent. And that's another thing, is you start to question yourself. You're like, what did I do wrong? But as far as our girls, I think it's really important, and the boys too. I think we've got to remind, I have 2 boys and 2 girls. So reminding them as well and asking them, hey, what did you do today that you felt like you were really good at? And you should see them light up. The other thing that I'd love to ask our kids and our adults, and I even ask our 20 somethings and college kids, is what would you do if you could do absolutely anything? And I have to remind them, now ask your kids this. It's fun. They don't need to know all these other little things, but without any kind of restrictions, like no logistics get in the way, finances aren't in the way, people aren't in the way. Like if you could do anything, what would it be? And I love to hear their stories. So no matter what the ages are, what are the ages of your kids now?
There are 10, 8, and 5.
Yes. Oh, those are such fun ages to ask those questions too, as well, because they just, their eyes light up. And then sometimes though, you'll hear them question themselves. And that's what I'm getting at. So they'll say, oh my gosh, I would love to travel to, I don't know, Sweden or whatever. I've even heard 10-year-olds say this, but I can't because mom's working and I can't. But then you just say, oh my gosh, but you know what? You might be able to do that one day. You can do that one day. So what would you do when you're there? So you have to like push them along to skip over the parts of I can't do it because.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and they just light up. I mean, sometimes this particularly happens with boys, especially teenage boys. Talk to them about, oh my gosh, if you could have any car, some girls are like this too. Like, what car would you have? And then there's hemming and hawing with some of them because they're like, well, this costs this amount. I can't do this. But they're like, no. We mean like, what if you could just snap your fingers right now and have it? And what we've done before too is those things that they're talking about that they're getting excited about, like it's a trip or something like that, or a car. Bring it up on the computer. Bring it up. And oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. And really what it's doing is it's reinforcing that, you know what? I can dream about anything I want. I can do anything. I really can. If I want to travel there, there's no reason why I can't do that one day. Now, may end up, maybe they won't, maybe they will. But really, I always feel like what we're doing right now in the moment is setting us up for the next moments. So if we're excited now, we're going to put out those energies or vibes or whatever, or we're going to be excited. I just got so excited about these pictures that I just saw of Sweden. So when I go to practice today, like I'm already pumped. Like I'm already pumped up. I'm not like, oh God, I wish I would have done better today on this or better today on that. So then again, that goes back into what you think and feel about yourself, right? Because so now I feel really darn good about myself. And I didn't go anywhere and I didn't do anything. I just got out of my own head into something that I'm excited about doing. So that goes back to how we feel about ourselves. Always look in the mirror, compliment something, find out what can you do, be grateful. So these are for all kids, all adults too. And this should be part of your morning routine. 5 things you're grateful for before you get out of bed. Teach your kids that. Teach your boys and girls that. And you know what? You can always come up with 5 things. The thing is that they think about it. There are things they're grateful for. But if it's not a habit, they're not going to think about it. And again, that makes them feel better about themselves because, oh gosh, I do have these things in my life. I have these things in my life.
Yeah, I'm thinking if they're gonna resist, like just saying the same 5 things just
Well,
to
it
get
doesn't
it
have
over
to.
with.
Well, it doesn't. Honestly, you can tell them, listen, it doesn't need to be the same 5 things, but if it is, it's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a routine and it's a habit.
Okay.
And as they get a little bit older, they'll start thinking, wow, grateful for my mom. Like she's still around. Like this is, you know what I mean? Like my mom's healthy. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the roof over my head. I'm grateful that I'm breathing today. As you get older, you actually those are the things that are
Appreciate
coming.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. But if they're just appreciative and if they can't come up with 5 things, I always rattle them off. Okay, you're breathing, you have a roof over your head, you're getting out of a comfortable bed, you're warm or whatever the thing is, and you're going to do this today. Like there's always something. Don't ever tell me there's not 5 things. I'll even write it down for you so that you can repeat it every day. So if they do, I mean, I agree with the changes, but again, we're trying to instill habits and routines into their life that are good. And that comes into sports. It comes to your self-perception, what you feel and think about yourself, because I always say, even with the book, so it's a 30-day book and I do it every 6 months. I do it every 6 months. And the reason why I do that is because that's about the amount of time that it takes for the outside world to start affecting you again.
Let's repeat that. It's a mic drop moment. Please repeat that.
It takes about 6 months for the outside world to start affecting what you think about yourself again. So by doing this, I do this every 6 months. It's 30 days. There's something you do every day, and it's a very short little task. Do some journaling, and it resets that self-perception. It resets what you think and feel about yourself. Because listen, We may not be listening to people and agreeing with what they're saying about us, and they may not even be talking about us, but we're listening and we're absorbing that into our subconscious mind. I truly believe that. I've seen it. I've seen it with myself, and I've lived it. And I will say, when I was personal training women, when I started doing that, I started working on my self-perception, what I thought and felt about myself. And I started doing that because I was going through, I was very young. I had 2 kids, going through a divorce. I was working a lot. And I started to realize that some things in my life were going really well, and some of them were not, like, at all. So I've got to figure this out. So I started realizing that what I was thinking about was actually happening more, whether it was good or bad. What I'm getting at with this is, when I was personal training my clients, I started working with them on the same thing I was working on for myself, which was my self-perception, what I thought and felt about myself. And oh my gosh, what changes these women made in their lives. Now, there were some, of course, that said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't need any help with that. But I will tell you, looking back, because now I've got so many years, because I've been doing this now for 30 plus years, those women who did not work on their self-perception, they're not as healthy as they could be. They fell off the bandwagon with any kind of routines and habits. They're not replacing bad habits with good habits, because you've got to work on what you think and feel about yourself. Because when you do that, when you're exercising and getting movement or journaling or read, 5 things you're grateful for, you're doing it for yourself, not for somebody else, and not for what the outside world thinks. And that makes
and you're
all
consciously planting the seeds and not just waiting to see where it goes. Your
absolutely
thoughts.
We have to consciously plant the seeds. And again, that comes back to our kids. We have to give them the tools to be able to do that themselves. They're not going to figure it out themselves. That's why we're parents. That is our job. That is our job. And I think there's some, I see it, who I get it with letting your kids make choices and letting them do this and that. That's perfect. That's great. But as a parent, you still are the parent, and they don't know what they don't know. So you've got to teach them.
Yeah, I do believe that. And the earlier, the better, because they can figure it out by themselves, maybe in their 30s. But if they know it from their younger years, they'll be so much more ahead.
They will be. And then, like I said, it's sinking in, it's getting in there. So when they're in their teen years or they're in their college years, and you wonder if it's sunk in, because sometimes, I mean, I know all kids are different, but if you've got more than one child, there's going to be one that you're thinking, oh my gosh, what happened? Did this not work? It's there. And then you'll start to see the changes, like, oh, and I mean, seriously, because I've done it. You take a sigh of relief, like, whew, all right.
He's all right.
They're all right. I knew it would come back at some point. But we have to be role models too. And I think that's one thing that I'm very adamant about, that I've seen for myself. Our kids are watching absolutely everything that we do, and habits and routines. That's gotten me to where I am today. And I really feel it goes well. It goes really well. And the thing is when things aren't going okay, I know that I have to look inward. So and I think that's good for our kids to learn too. So if things around me aren't going great, the first thing I do is look at myself and say, okay, where's my mind been? What have I been thinking about? What have I been doing? Do I have habits now that I need to shift? Because I can't change anybody else. And that's another thing with self-perception that it teaches us with a healthy self-perception, is we can't change anybody else. We can only change ourselves. We can't get somebody out of a situation, but we can get ourselves out of a situation. And we have to know enough and be confident enough in ourselves to be able to move on. And you'll see that with your kids, and you probably already do with your 2 older ones with friends. I mean, there's probably some days where somebody's not nice.
A lot of those.
Yeah. And then we got to figure out, okay, well, I mean, how many chances do you give somebody before you have to move on? And how do you do that in a nice way? Because you're a nice person, even though you want to not be sometimes. I mean, there's things like that I truly believe habits, routines, and a healthy self-perception teaches our kids that this is how we have to maneuver life, because life's not just a straight line. There's not, every second is a choice. Every second is a choice. We don't want them to get in situations that they stay in too long that aren't
Yeah.
healthy. I mean, that's
Wow.
how they learn. That's how they learn, figuring out things. But if they've already got it ingrained in them, at least they'll open up about it and not try to keep it in, because they know there's communication at home. They know that there's going to be a time that if they need an outlet, they can have one. It's okay to not be friends with everybody. As long as you feel good about yourself, really, that's all that matters.
It truly is. Yeah, I do agree. It's a wonderful way to end the conversation on that point. Thank you so much. I think we started with sports, but we went even deeper on a topic that it's even more important, in my opinion, self-perception. Would you tell the listeners where they can further connect with you?
Yes. So you can just go to my website. It's CathleneMiner.com. And my name, you'll have it in there. It's spelled a little bit different. The first name and the last name is. But it's CathleneMiner.com. And please feel free to reach out with any questions. And I really appreciate you having me. You've been such a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you so much for listening and letting me be a part of your day. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, please consider rating it and leaving me a review. Reviews are literally the lifeblood of a podcaster and help me so much. Have a great week, and I'll see you next Wednesday.